Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So we've been going for 4 months now, and what's happening is we're starting to see a lot of inbound inquiries, which is super exciting. And today's episode is actually someone that my company knows, and they approached us and said, hey, you know, we really like Cambridge Tech Podcast, can we come on? Which, of course, we said yes.
Yeah, these are, when we do say this every week, it's not a hollow gesture. We really do welcome companies, you know, coming forward and waving their hands to come onto the show. So today's show is with Oomph Ventures. Why should you listen? Well, it's a female-founded clean tech startup business based here in South Cambridgeshire, and they're looking to disrupt the current EV charging model. The company has designed and developed the technology for off-grid rapid mobile charging of EVs, which themselves are charged by renewable energy sources and are delivered in electric vehicles, which will directly support businesses and their net zero goals. And I'll just give you an advance warning of some deep EV fanboy conversations that we get into.
Excellent. So let's introduce Morag Hutcheon, who is the founder of Oomph EV. Hi, Morag. Thanks for coming and joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So you founded Oomph EV 4 years ago, I believe, and we're going to obviously talk a lot about Oomph EV, but I actually want to find out a little bit about you first of all. And I believe you spent 2 decades in design, winning various accolades. You want to just tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, from a young age, I was interested in making things different and improving and looking at things from a very different perspective. One of my memories that sticks with me quite often is careers advice. What would you like to do when you grow up, sort of thing. I'd like to be an engineer. And in the early 80s, this was sort of laughed at. My careers teacher laughed at me and said, girls don't do that, go and do typing, sort of next. And it sort of stuck with me, that actually gave me a little bit of determination that no, there's no reason why I can't. I do think differently. At the time, we couldn't do design technology at school. We couldn't do technical drawing. So it was big barriers. And I've sort of taken those and just broken them down all the way through my career, and started as an industrial designer, worked 30 years in different consultancies, which was brilliant because it was across so many sectors, fuel pumps, consumer goods, a lot of medical instruments, and that gives you a really good founding of experience and knowledge and thinking differently about how you create new products and systems and brands and things.
Really interesting and super diverse. I think most of us can remember of a certain age can remember those conversations with careers advisors. I think it's moved on a little bit since then.
Well, has it? Yeah, I guess that was going to be my kind of follow-up question. I mean, what is the situation like right now in education? Have you kept close to that, or?
Spoke to some girls in London a couple of years ago, and they were trying to encourage girls into engineering, and they were because they were having the same issue. I think it's improving. Probably depends where you are and your background, family-wise as well. I think there's still a lot of challenges to overcome and encourage more open thinking and diversity in what you can do and what you can achieve. But then, if we go back to the early 80s, we didn't have internet. I don't know how I decided to be, or even think that an engineering position would be for me, because we just didn't see those things.
Yeah.
The world's very different now.
You think back, don't you? How did you ever discover anything? If it wasn't in your immediate social circle or accessible to you in some way, it's very difficult to find out about things that wouldn't pass you by, you know, on a day-to-day basis. And where'd you find the role models from, you know, in a situation like that?
Yeah, my father was an engineer, so I guess that's where I got mine, and my brother as well. And I guess that immediate family is where I got my steers from. Or golf, which I didn't follow as a career. I sometimes wish I had, but I went into the sort of development, innovation and engineering as the thing was my heart and soul, really.
But golf's still leisure?
It's become leisure again, yeah. I played very high level, and the decision to go professional or not, well, I was about 18. Didn't think I was good enough and wanted to be doing what I'm doing now so much that I stopped playing when I moved away from home. I couldn't afford to join a golf club. And I started again about 7-8 years ago, and I've just completely fallen in love, and I'm back at an incredibly high level, just finding the time now in this sort of new business interest to play. But hopefully the next 12 months I'll sort of get back on the course at least twice a week if possible.
Interesting.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Indeed. So let's go back to the conversation about your father, your brother, you had those male role models around you, but you are a female entrepreneur. How's that journey been? Was that also a little bit of a shock?
Yes, because it wasn't planned. It's just sort of happened. And actually, I'm not a very confident person. And Phil, my business partner for 30 years. Actually, this month is 31 years this month we've worked together. And he's always been very encouraging. One of his other people that he brought into the industry was Johnny Ive of Apple. So he's seen some talent and bits and pieces. And I think he saw something in me which was something different again, which is how I think. And it was irrelevant that I was female. And he's just encouraged me. We've worked together across all these segments. And for a lot of that time, I was too shy to speak. I would just fade to the background and do all what I needed to do. And it wasn't until fairly recently, probably 5 years ago, when my life changed, that I found a voice and found my own confidence, really, that what I did and how I thought really mattered and could make a difference.
Morag, do you want to talk about what happened?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Well, yeah, 5 years ago, exactly this week, I was told I had a very aggressive cancer. It was a bit of a shock.
And so what did that do to change your view, your outlook? You just suggested you looked at things very differently.
Yeah, I think until that point, I'd sort of always felt nobody really noticed me and I'd gone under the radar, and I'd won some really big awards, which was fantastic. And that was probably where my confidence started to appear a little bit, or acceptance that I could do things quite well. But I think at the point of cancer entered my life, everything changed. I realised actually I was quite strong. I thought I would collapse and fall apart, but it became evident that there was something in me that I'd never really seen before. And the love and care that I had from friends and family was quite overwhelming as well. And I think I've just taken a lot of that positivity and energy, incredible, difficult and traumatic time, because you don't know if you're going to get through the next 6 months, to still be here 5 years later talking about it, being a female entrepreneur of an incredibly exciting business with a brilliant team working together with me it's quite something.
It's amazing how such devastating news had that huge impact on you, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some lessons that I think many could take in all different types of things, not necessarily to do with cancer, but just how you view the future and be positive and what's possible. Everything's possible. It's just a mindset. Yeah. And certainly going through my treatment, as much as I was terrified, very lucky to be in this area and have 2 or 3 professors looking after me. I just said, you tell me what to do and I'm not going to question it. I will do exactly everything. And it was immensely hard, but I'm here.
Yeah, you're here. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's part of your story. So it's great you've been open about that. Thank you. So let's move on then and talk about Oomph. And I believe this came out of personal experience. So where did the whole idea for Oomph EV come from?
Actually, 2 things we just talked about is where it came from. Just before my diagnosis, a friend of mine, we were going to play golf in their new Tesla. And I said, I always like to run the gauntlet on my mileage. My life is so hectic. Actually planning to charge and trying to find a charge station is going to be really difficult for me. And then it occurred to me by the time we'd finished that journey that actually there was an opportunity if we needed an equivalent of a jerry can, like 5 litre top up. And I'm sure we could do that with a battery charging capability. And that's where the sort of gem of the idea came from. And really, that was something that I focused on very heavily through my cancer treatment. That was the only thing I was thinking about, obviously getting better. But it was just that, give me the time to really think about it as a proposition, look globally at what was out there, look at the growth in EV, looked at the problems from an industry perspective or a consumer perspective moving to EV, and just kept getting more and more information and a focus for me, partly to get through something fairly traumatic, which was good to focus on something, but it soon became very obvious that actually this was something that we needed to really do and sort of move on to the next step.
As you describe that, it's kind of sounds like it's there as a reassurance kind of emergency backup kind of product in case you are caught short, for want of a better expression, or is it an actual product designed to have regular use? It's more like a kind of top-up product. How do you position it with the kind of marketing messaging?
I think originally it was definitely a sort of an emergency scenario. But as we've developed and gone through and spoken to thousands of users, sort of EV drivers and companies, and we listen to their problems, car delivery company will take, BMW take 5 on the back of a flatbed for new customers, and it takes them 5 days to charge them up. Well, surely as that progresses and everything's EV, there's a real problem there. So I think there's a constant service opportunity. There's the occasional use, but and the top up, which is I don't have a charge point at home. 63% of the population globally do not have access to a driveway, and just thinking about the way of trying to get the infrastructure into all of those people that really need it. If we're going to transition everybody, we need 100 different systems to be able to support them, because digging up a pavement isn't always possible if you live in an apartment. So this is sort of the gap that helps anybody transition to EV, be it a corporation and a fleet management company through to the automotive companies offering a service to their customers, or customers themselves saying, actually, we want to do this, but we don't know, we can't transition on, we need some charge.
Okay.
So it's grown into something that much more than just a little niche.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in simple terms, then you have a battery. To take your, the example of a domestic property without a driveway, if you're parking on the street, you would charge the battery domestically on a usual 3-pin plug, and then take that out to the car, plug it in, and charge. Or how does that work?
Well, the system we've worked on is a fairly bigger unit, so it's 50 kilowatt hours and 50 kilowatt charging, which is quite big and quite expensive. So what we're looking to do is sell the technology to people that want to do a service, to be able to go and drop curb, charge, and then drive around the corner and charge somebody else at the same time. So you don't have any disruption to your life, you don't have to dig up the pavement, and it's quite cost effective because you're not having to put any infrastructure in. And I think that's something for consumers that we could do quite easily.
Okay, so it's more of a B2B proposition with a service element to it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned it's, you say 35 kilowatt, 50 kilowatts?
50 kilowatt hours.
Okay, so that is actually quite fast then.
It's very fast. It's a sort of rapid charger.
A lot faster than a lot of the public infrastructure out there.
It is. And I think this is something that we're very passionate about as well. Is I've lived with an EV for 2.5 years, and it's a big learning curve to go up to. Before that, for 40 years, giving away my age, maybe not quite 40 years, driving a wet fuel car, it's very different. The language is different. Gallons and litres to kilowatt hours and kilowatts charging and all the rest. It's so different. And I don't think there's anybody helping consumers or anybody with an EV to move into that. So I think we will play a big part in trying to help educate and guide that transition as well.
I think that's a really important point, because, the success of these things is going to be down to the user experience and the friction. And as you say that, even now, how many years have we had domestic electricity supply, and you still get a bill from your electricity supplier in kilowatts, and it means nothing to you.
No.
And trying to make that connection of switching off a light or a TV, and how does that relate to my bill? It's impossible for the average user, right?
It is, yeah.
Thankfully, we're getting past that point now of different connector types as well. But if you go to, it's like Russian roulette. If you go to a public charging station, likely it's going to be out of order anyway, yes, or an ICE car blocking it.
That's right.
But then you've got to figure out your chargers and your cables and all that kind of stuff. So having a one size fits all solution that just turns up and charges your car and you don't have to worry about it seems like quite an interesting breakthrough.
Yeah, we've really sort of try to come at it from a user perspective. So it's what's going to make it easier for somebody with an EV. So it's take all those pain points out. Somebody parked where they shouldn't be, along what happened at Christmas and the New Year at Gretna, sort of 40 cars waiting to get on those 4 charge points. And I think these are the things that people don't understand. So our approach to be able to go in and quickly, hence the 50 kilowatt, to go in quickly, charge somebody up and move on to the next person, rather than somebody park, take up that space, go for a coffee, 2 hours, and you've got somebody else that wants to move it. It doesn't really make sense. So this is sort of turning the problem on its head to try and make it accessible to many more people much quicker without anybody having to do anything. So when we got the e-tron, the Audi we've been using as a sort of demo car to get up to speed with everything EV, it was 47 hours sat on a charge point because it was 12 weeks to get my home charge point fitted. Well, any normal person with family, what do you want to do? Would you rather stay at home and put the kids to bed or have dinner with the family rather than sit out on a cold autumn's night charging up to get to work to the next day? That's not a solution, I don't think, that's going to help the transition. And then there's the charging rates. So we talk about 7 kilowatts if you're lucky at a home charge point, and you can get the rapid 150. But I think a lot of the unknowns for the user is if you go to a supermarket, they promote, we've got a charge point, but that's probably going to give them 3 or 4 miles while they've done their shopping to go back. Yeah. And the difference between a 7 kilowatt charger and 150 or a 50 watt charger, it's massive. And it's like the difference between the dial-up modem speeds and what you get now. And I think, again, education-wise, for the masses, these are the differences. When the temperature drops, your battery range drops. So you have to figure these things in. Yeah. And if Oomph can provide a service that we know you're going to be going up the A1 and you're going to be here, we can sort of pinpoint and say, this is what we like to do in the future, pinpoint and say, well, a vehicle could come out here as one of the service providers. You can go in and have a coffee or warm up with your family, and we'll give you a charge, and then you can carry on your journey. So it's sort of really... So
it is almost on demand. It's that responsive, is it?
It can be. Obviously, we're doing the technology to provide that, but that's what we've built. So a company with a fleet could do that absolutely right.
I'm kind of on a flow here. Yeah, exactly. I guess my final question then, before I hog all of the time, is that classic startup question, the scalability of it. You know, I guess if you're B2B, or that's not necessarily your issue because it's the fleet of providers that are going to be out there on the roads. But how do you see that growing over time? What kind of growth do we need to see in service providers to match the adoption of EVs in the UK?
It needs to be significant, and I don't think from everything I've read and understood and heard that actually we can manage that. So our solution is one really good entry into the market to help that, as well as other solutions, and there's probably another 50 out there that need to be developed as well, because mass adoption of EV is significant. And I think for us, growth, yes, we'll develop the technology. I think ultimately one day we might have a little service or work with somebody to have an Oomph service. I would really love that, but we'll do it through a business-to-business partner that can run that fleet, and that's their expertise. But yeah, it'd be great to have Oomph going around helping people, which is what we're doing on the inside. So,
what I would like to understand, because you presented at the Tech Nation Rising Stars regional final a few weeks ago, and you showed the pictures of the box in the booth. And, I guess, how does it work? Can you describe what the box is, what the mechanics are of it?
Sure. It's lithium batteries based around, and we've got some inverters and power modules and some very clever electronics and software that's been developed over the last 18 months. It's high voltage, so obviously there's a lot of safety issues with what we're doing. So we've managed to do things with regulations and trying to look at setting some of the regulations, because there's some competitors and there isn't a sort of industry standard. So that's one of the things that we'd like to try be part of setting. So yeah, a box of clever bits of technology that we've brought together. We're not making the batteries. We'd like to partner with somebody in the future that maybe have a different battery technology. And I think the benefit of what we're doing is it's a technology that could be 6 different battery methods or types in the future. It's the same principle with everything else that we're built around.
So you could be agnostic from that perspective, which I guess is a key advantage for you. I mean, there's a lot of money being invested in future battery technology right now. So do you see an opportunity to diversify the product range? So you might get to a size of battery that a driver could carry around in the boot of their car or have at a domestic property? Or do you think it would always need that kind of service element?
No, I think we can certainly look at that. I think there's the question for the home-based system is speed. We've gone into the market very early on. We looked at some of the smaller units and we could have done that. But actually, when you're looking to really make a difference, a rapid charge is anything up of sort of 30 kilowatts, isn't it? Yeah. Doing 7 kilowatts with a pack, yes, there's an opportunity in the market for that. And we might at some stage go into that. But we've sort of really focused on out and about really doing a rapid charge because we understand from the research that's what people really want. They don't want to stick there for 24 hours being charged. Yeah. They want to have a quick, sharp charge and get on their way again.
Yeah. Perfect example, isn't it, of being a startup, shaking up a marketplace. And it's not just the tech, it's the who do you partner with. Yep. It's the fact that you've got to educate the market. You're looking at regulation. It's the whole package. It's quite a complicated area, isn't it?
It's incredibly complicated and it's rapidly moving and scaling. There's a lot of people in the industry as well that are still very blinkered on, well, we always had fuel stations and we'll just put in the same, but with relatively slow charges in comparison to filling up with a wet fuel car, which takes 5 minutes for a full tank. We're looking at 40 minutes probably for an EV. And that's quite a difference. So we've come at it from a different perspective. Actually, that time is really precious to people. So if we can develop something that people provide that to give them time back rather than sit charging when they don't want to.
I mean, it's all very considered, what you're talking about. And I think the other thing that I didn't realise is even the name. There's quite a lot of thought gone into the name as well. Do you want to explain to everyone where Oomph came from?
Of course. It's something that everybody warms to, oomph. So it's the sort of the double meaning of you hear all the time, need a bit of oomph to get going, need a bit of oomph to be able to move something. So we took that plus the 0 miles per hour. So if you look at it as split it down into 2, 0 miles per hour when you run out of charge and you haven't got any energy to get going again and you need a bit of oomph to get yourself going. So it's a really nice, simple play on words.
In this week's news, we have updates from Arm, Glyconics, Resilience, the Impulse Programme and the Business Weekly Awards. First to Arm, where market diversification continues to drive strong royalty and licensing growth. In the Q3 results, CEO René Haas has announced that total revenue for the quarter was $746 million, up 28% year-on-year, and Arm partners shipped a record 8 billion Arm-based chips, taking the total to date to more than 250 billion. Medtech firm Glyconics continues development of its novel non-invasive diabetes screening device by meeting primary endpoints in 2 clinical investigations. Climate analytics company Resilience has secured $26 million Series B funding to help global businesses transition to the low-carbon economy. In advance of the 2023 programme, Impulse at the Maxwell Centre have shown their weight in supporting entrepreneurship, with 1 in every 2 programme participants going on to found a commercial technology business. And finally, entry for the 2023 Business Weekly Awards has opened, and already a clutch of exciting companies have thrown their hats into the ring, including BIOS Health, VividQ and Zeta Genomics. For more details on the awards and for more detail of this week's news, please follow Business Weekly.
So just going back to a point that Faye just started to touch on, partnerships, clearly, with your go-to-market strategy, it's going to be critical, to the success of the business. So, can you share your kind of thinking around how you're forming partnerships? Because that would be really insightful for, the startup founders that are listening to the show.
Sure. Obviously, with the research we've done, you get to talk to lots of interesting people in different sectors, not just consumers. And I think some of our thinking sort of awakened some views in the industry that are changing things. But I think I'd like to bring together energy companies as well as delivery companies with our technology to go and deliver energy, a sustainable energy or renewable energy, via our EV clean equipment, because it's lithium, it's not diesel, it's quiet and clean, through an EV network of vehicles direct to the customer. I think that's a really exciting proposition. So energy companies, delivery companies, automotive companies, so helping their customers charge or managing their customers' anxiety about how to charge in the worst case scenario, or learning experience. So partnering with some automotive companies, energy companies, delivery companies, conversations we've been having.
What's your experience been like? I mean, obviously, you don't want to upset any potential partners, but they sound like large, bureaucratic, slow-moving organisations. Have they been open to working with a startup?
Yeah, they're quite excited because they see this opportunity as being the future for them and how they can really engage and support their customers. As some fairly significant brands, they really care about the customers, and they see this as something that will help sell their vehicles or get energy to where it's really needed, right to the doorstep. Because if you think of the wet fuel stations, wet forecourts, that's going to disappear over the next 10, 20 years. How do they engage with their customers? So this is an opportunity that they can take renewable energy, get to the customers, offer them a service, and they're sort of back in people's minds as brands and helping consumers and fleets and everything else.
I did a bit of work with BMW Drive Now in the previous life. At that stage, I don't know if they still are, but they talk about the future of mobility rather than people owning cars, right? Because Gen Z, etc., probably don't see the need of owning there's a lump of metal on the driveway that just depreciates every 5 seconds. So this feels like an absolutely perfect solution for kind of urban car sharing, where if they transfer to EV vehicles, you can guarantee people hiring them aren't going to charge them. So it sounds like absolutely a perfect market for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the rental car market, and the fantastic Cambridge company, they're the only company, I believe, in Cambridge to rent EV cars, to put in charge point, which they've only got a small sort of 22 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt charger. They got a quote to dig up and put in a rapid charger, which was £98,000 plus the charge from the council to dig up the road. Yeah. And this is a real barrier to small businesses, even the big corporations that have got multiple sites that maybe don't have access to be able to dig up and everything else. So it's really supporting the small businesses, as well as working with, hopefully we'll get to work with some of the big corporations to make a difference there, but at local level to help these small companies that are trying to make a difference with what they're doing as a business, but actually fall over at the first hurdle, because the cost to implement a fixed infrastructure, even for one vehicle, is immense. So they've got 6 vehicles. If they're delivered back, they don't necessarily come back with a full charge or nearly full. Sometimes it can be 20%. And they've got a real problem to try and charge those up before so they lose rental opportunities because they have to take them off grid for quite a long time to get them recharged. So if you think of that as one business in itself, what we're doing is really going to help them. And if you take that and spread it globally and around the country with different sectors, it's hopefully something that will really make a difference and help people.
It reminds me, you talked about dial-up modems earlier on. It reminds me of this huge retrofit we've had to do to get broadband everywhere. And thankfully, I think we're past that now. So this is really an alternative that we don't even have to go down that route.
Yeah, we don't have to dig up the pavements, and we can just implement a silent, clean system. And I think that's the other nice thing that we're very concerned about as a business, that this isn't running diesel generators or running it in a diesel van. We've gone EV for our demo vehicle that we're going to support and do some trials locally. We'll run it in an EV. We'll try and take the energy that we put into that from renewable sources, wind and solar. So we're doing the right thing, and I think as an opportunity, this is something quite unique that we can spread and grow, because it's doing the right thing for the environment and for the future.
Yeah, so I guess my question was going to be, you talk about your demo van. So what stage are you at, in terms of, are you at a prototype MVP stage, or are you past that stage and you're now into full commercialization? I guess 2 questions. Where are you right now, and what does 2023 look like for the business?
Okay, so we've been trialling the prototype that works and fully tested. We trialled it with an automotive company last year over 3 months, which was very successful. We're now at sort of just finalising the sort of pre-production version. We've done some changes. We've increased the kilowatt hours, so we've gone from a 30 to a 50s hour lead product to make a bigger difference. And I think we're just about to move, hopefully, into our industry unit so we can really take on growing the business and growing the opportunity, building our own resource to be able to do manufacturing or assembly. And sort of 2023 is a really exciting opportunity for us.
What about for you as well? So we've got the golf course we need to be looking out for.
Sure.
You've talked about, being a female entrepreneur. What are you going to be looking at this year?
So Oomph is really at a good stage. We're ready to move into an industrial unit to take on our assembly and to be able to build ourselves rather than rely on anybody else and start to grow that opportunity and build a sales and engineering team. Then we can sort of start to go a little bit more wider afield and global with this opportunity. So 2023 is a really exciting time for us. Just about to go into the big investment next stage, which is daunting but exciting. There's a lot of interest already. We've got a lot of VC and interested parties sort of knocking on the door. So we're just about to put our toe in the water for that, which is exciting. And then for me, Oomph is what it's about. Keep doing what I'm doing, keep trying to show people what's possible and to think differently and to make a difference. Everybody can do it. Trying a little bit more golf. We'll see.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time today, Morag.
That's great. Thanks for having me.
That was a really interesting session, really authentic, genuine conversation. So I love that. But what I want to know from you, James, fanboy, tell us what did you learn?
Well, I mean, I think we speak to a lot of really interesting technology companies on the show. What really impressed me about Morag is just how much she understood the market and the opportunity and has really focused down on just the user experience and removing the friction and the anxiety of EV ownership. It just feels like there's a real opportunity there because we all know how expensive, how disruptive, how slow it is to, dig roads up and put infrastructure into the UK to support, the needs of EV drivers as we see more and more vehicles on the road. And, Oomph is just a really practical solution to a real problem.
And she's really thought around it as well. So, it is the not digging up the roads, it's the regulation, it's the connection she's making. And if you do, and I suggest that, if you're listening in, do go and follow Morag on LinkedIn. She has a lot of engagement with really influential people. So that whole point of educating the market, I think, is really important too. And she did say as she was leaving that maybe there should be a trial here at the Bradfield Centre. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were speaking off microphone. We've been looking for a long time about how we might support EV charging at the centre. And to the point I just made, the infrastructure that's necessary is so disruptive and expensive. We haven't yet found a way forward on that. So, that could be an amazing partnership. So, yeah, we'd love to follow up on that conversation. So
just before we wrap up, in other news, we have an update on TechNation Rising Stars. You'll remember in episode 18, we had the judges talking about the final. We now know who the regional winners are. So they are in first place Permetrics, in second place Medwise AI, in third place Ripple XN, and Versed AI also got a highly recommended. So congratulations to all of those companies.
So we'll, of course, keep tabs on the progress of those local companies in the national finals. We'll be waving the flag for the East of England in what will be the final cohort of TechNation Rising Stars.
So next week, we're going to be talking to Mark Traherne, who's going to be taking us through a new international EMBA in life sciences. See you next week.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It will really help others discover the show.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.